I do not intend to be long, but essentially to highlight that it is very, very important for us to be able to have these discussions in respect of government's development plans vis-a-vis the respective agencies that are going to work with government. It is critical for us to have this because we need complementarity, and I think what has really happened in the past in many of the development programs that have taken place, there has been a lack of complementarity. And what I mean by that essentially is that we need development assistance to be working together with government's priorities. Because at the end of the day, as we've highlighted previously in many other discussions with our bilateral partners, that we do not want to be always on the aid train, as we say. We want to be able to get off the aid train, and we want to be able to stand on our 2 feet. The only way that we can do that is if there is a concerted effort by government and the NGOs in the targeted areas that need to be given a leg up for us to be able to achieve their full capacity. Capacity, of course, is not just in terms of direct assistance by way of financial contribution or in terms of, for example, materials or those other types of tangible things that you can count and see yourself. But it's also more to do with capacity building within our HR, capacity building within our local personnel, who may not necessarily have the kind of exposure and training and experience that is required for us to be able to deliver the services that's required, to be able to carry out the level of analysis that's required, to be able to then deliver what is required by members of the public in Fiji. Governments, of course, there's a number of areas that is very critical for us in respect of the priorities that we are giving, and I'd like to mention some of them. In particular, those that we see that will empower Fijians expeditiously, but in an organized fashion, as opposed to being haphazard about it. And we have issues such as housing is a big problem. Housing in terms of access to affordable housing, housing in terms of having proper housing, housing in areas where you actually have proper access to sanitation, water, electricity. We see various parts in Fiji, for example, even within the urban centers, where you have housing, people who may be serving you in banks at the moment, they're actually living over a tiri swamp. Somewhere in Inasuba. They're using a latrine out in the tiri swamp and they're probably serving in the bank. You may not know about it, but that is a reality. So we need to fundamentally address that. And one of the other reasons why we do need to address that is because we need people to be able to have what we call social mobility. Social mobility is very critical, and this is one area that we are quite passionate about. If you see areas like Namboa, if you look at areas like Rwanda, where you had housing authority flats that were developed in the 1970s and in the 80s, those people actually have not moved out of those areas. They've been there for 40 years. The reason why that has actually occurred is because those governments and agencies that put that together did not, unfortunately, have the foresight. Because the whole reason as to why you want somebody to own an asset is not just only to give them a roof over their head, but for them to be able to have that asset appreciated. The asset does not appreciate, they cannot actually have that social mobility. If you look at models like in countries like Singapore, we actually have housing compounds or even flats where you have what you call affordable housing, medium cost housing, and high cost housing. All of them can actually be in one block of flats or within the same vicinity. So when you have the type of ability to have asset appreciation, people will be able to then, even though they may pay $10 a week for their flat, they will in 5 or 10 years' time have an increased value in that asset. So when the son or the daughter starts working, with more income earners, they can actually move out to a better place. They can actually move out and buy probably a freestanding home. These are the kind of issues we do need to look at, and that's what actually empowers people. So that's one area in particular pertaining to housing. The other area, of course, is, which is, some may say the flavor of the month, which is the climate change. Climate change, a lot of people do talk about climate change. A lot of people actually do talk about climate change without actually understanding the the practical impact of climate change itself. Climate change is not only about cyclones. Climate change is an everyday issue. We have actually villages, we have low-lying areas in Fiji where encroaching waters are affecting them every day. We have salinity increase in farming areas. If you go to Vanuatu, places where people used to plant cane, used to plant their crops, they no longer can because the salt levels in the soils have increased because of encroaching waters. So those farmlands are no longer arable. You can plant anything there. Also with climate change, you have, for example, the type of seeds you use. Fiji, of course, has always been beholden to the Australian and New Zealand quarantine laws because of our colonial history. They were the two sort of larger colonial countries next to us. So most of the seed sources for our agricultural produce actually comes from those countries. However, seeds perhaps from countries like Malaysia or India are more suitable for us. Case in point is, I think at one point we used to have tomatoes only grow about 3-4 months in the year because of the fact that we use seeds that were used to more cooler weather. But that no longer is the case for us. And of course, with increasing temperature levels, we need to ensure we're able to source our seeds from better, suppliers or better markets than what we currently use. So these are some of the implications regarding climate change. We also need to have capacity building, of course, in terms of how to improve our responses. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that many of the international agencies, indeed a number of the UN agencies have said that the responses to Cyclone Winston was actually very good by the respective government agencies, but of course we can always improve upon them. And so in terms of capacity building, whether it's to do with coordination, whether it's to do with mobility or resources, very quickly in terms of relief funds, and indeed post the immediate relief funds as required, and that is actual rehabilitation. The rehabilitation includes rehabilitation of your farms, rehabilitation of your livelihoods. That is critical, and that would have been affected by these type of single climatic events. Fundamentally, as Minister of Economy, I've always been very concerned about the fact that Fiji, unfortunately for decades, has not very much focused on a strong economic base. And this is what we've been trying to do in the past 6 or 7 years, to build a strong economic base. Our reliance on only 1 or 2 sectors to contribute towards our GDP is actually quite disastrous from my perspective. If you had Cyclone Winston stay on the same trajectory that it was supposed to be on, which would have meant it would have hit Suva and Osori and Lani and cut across Viti Levu, most of the manufacturing base of Fiji would have gone. Most of the factories are in this part of Fiji. Nearly 300,000 people live here in the Suva and Osori Lani corridor. It would have cut across Viti Levu, hit Nandi, and wiped out all the Coral Coast and also Nandi, the tourism areas. 35 to 37%, depending on whose figures you want to use, tourism contributes to our GDP. That would have been a massive setback for us. So the fact that you have only a couple of industries contributing a bulk of the growth of our economy means that we are vulnerable. So our risks need to be mitigated. The same way, for example, even within the tourism sector, the fact that Australia and New Zealand contribute about 68% of our total arrivals is actually a risk. If their economies don't do well, that means the arrival numbers will drop significantly in Fiji. So you have a higher risk, higher exposure. The idea is not just to grow the numbers, but to actually spread that risk across a number of supply markets. So similarly, we need to be able to work with our development agencies, including, of course, the UN. And when we come up with the programs of the UN, we need to be able to expand our economic base. We need to look at other areas. We need to look at other areas within specific areas, such as agriculture. Even agriculture, one would argue, is that there's a lot of scope for having more growth. There are many food items, for example, that we've traditionally had in Fiji that we have not actually marketed on a commercial scale. We've not actually even grown on a commercial scale. And we need to be able to look at that. I was just reading a report just a couple of weeks ago about, I do not know the English word for it, but there's a tree in Fiji, it's called Sayed-Khaiyum. I don't know how many of you know what Sayed-Khaiyum is. Sayed-Khaiyum is now discovered by the Americans to be the superfood. Sayed-Khaiyum is now made in pills. Sayed-Khaiyum is now powdered. You can drink as a protein shake and what have you. But traditionally in Fiji, it's something that has never been looked upon as something that's marketable. But we can. It grows wildly in Fiji. And it's considered to be a poor man or poor woman's food. But these are many of the areas that we can actually look at and that we need to be able to grow the potential in those areas. There are many other products we can talk about. The other area, of course, is actual empowerment of people in Fiji in terms of from a socio-political perspective. And I'm talking now, of course, about human rights. I'm talking about gender empowerment, bringing gender issues to the fore and mainstreaming them. I think there's a lot of opportunities to carry those out. Unfortunately, and I do have to say this, a lot of the development programs in Fiji have generally been focused on socio-political rights as opposed to socio-economic rights, or civil political rights, or I should say, as opposed to socio-economic rights. And if you see the Fijian Constitution, if you read the Fijian Constitution, you'll see there's a huge emphasis also at the same time on socio-economic rights, because in Fiji that has traditionally been neglected. And I think there needs to be, of course, within the rights paradigm, a complementarity that works together and hand in hand. We have to understand that when people actually are poor, when people are starving, when people don't have access to proper housing and sanitation, access to jobs, that actually manifests itself and can become actually a civil political issue. And unfortunately, that's how it has been utilized in Fiji. Whereas, on the other hand, you may have an array of civil and political rights, but if people do not actually have access to jobs, if they do not have access to the socio-economic rights that they should be, that they rightfully deserve too, then it actually creates social and political instability also. So there's a complementarity even within the rights paradigm. And of course in Fiji now, under the new constitution, you have not just the vertical application of rights, and that is those rights to be enforced by the citizen against the state, but is also now enforceable within various actors within the state. So you can, for example, enforce those rights. Those rights are now enforceable against NGOs, against clubs and societies, against companies, etc. So it's again expanding the scope of those rights within the Fijian context. The other area, of course, which is very critical and does feed into somewhat to climate change, is environment. You will find that we have some very basic issues. All you have to do is take a walk from here down to the USP along the foreshore area, and you'll find all sorts of things from buckets to all sort of paraphernalia that's lining the foreshore when you walk along. And apart from the fact that we should not be sort of reacting to it, we should be more proactive. So starting off at a very basic educational level, as to whether you should throw away the packet of empty bongo or twisties outside the car when your parents are driving, to throwing things in the sea, knowing the fact that it's not actually disposable, it's not biodegradable. So people need to have an awareness about that, but also to have the linkages between a clean environment and a healthier economic condition that we will have. I mean, you can go to some parts of Fiji where, fortunately, we're not as bad as some of the other countries, where you'll find, plastic in mangrove areas. That obviously curtails the life within the mangrove areas. So we need to be quite serious about environment itself. We need to be able to be mindful of the fact that as we grow our economy, as the population numbers grow, that we take proper care in the manner in which we dispose of our sewage, in the manner in which we dispose of our rubbish. So there may be opportunities in respect of converting garbage or rubbish to renewable energy. There's various proposals in respect of that. The Ministry of Local Government is looking at that. And we, of course, from the Ministry of Economy are keen. I suppose we suffer a similar fate to some of the other Pacific Island countries, because to have a recycling plant, you need to have volume. We may not necessarily produce that number of volume in some of our countries. So how we can actually get around that, how we can mitigate those risks is something that we need to put our heads together and have a program regarding that. Overall, I think, ladies and gentlemen, that will be some of the key areas that we are looking at. And of course, without sort of going into too much detail, I just wanted to provide some food for thought in respect of what we should be looking at. I mean, nearly 70% of our population, or 69.6% of the population, is below the age of 40. Now that produces not just a number of challenges, but also a number of opportunities that we must take advantage of. And what we do with that, how we deal with them, of course, in terms of not just providing jobs. In Fiji, the speak has always been when people leave schools that we must give them jobs. But we've never actually spoken quite openly about as to how they can actually become job creators themselves, almost immediately after leaving university. So, in respect of the announcement that was made in the budget earlier this year, looking at NextMed and how we can actually metamorphosize that into a more, a tangible organization that's more responsive to small, medium, and micro enterprise development in Fiji, having a holistic approach to that. That is not just providing, a grant, but also looking at providing some form of mentoring, business incubation, and hand-holding, writing up of projects, getting them to be mainstream, to getting monies lent to them by mainstream financial institutions. So we need to have a very concerted effort in respect of that. And that is very, very important. And we need to get participation from the NGO community regarding that. We have, for example, just talking about NGO participation that can work out to be quite successful, notwithstanding the fact that we have some teething issues with them. The Pacific Community of Network that is doing a development at Langi Langi, or commonly known as Jittu Estate. PCN has been working with the Ministry of Housing and been dealing with squatters and how they've relocated them within the confines of Langi Langi Estate and putting up apartment blocks and then moving them back in. And that actually has been successful to that extent. And there are similar, of course, projects that we can work together with the various NGOs through the UN. Last but not least, of course, is the medical area, the health, the physical health of our people. We now have one of the highest rates of diabetes. I'm told that we also have a high increase in coronary problems, coronary diseases. That is, of course, a worry, it is a concern. I just, I joked yesterday, I was in a village called Namoli, which is, those of you who know a little bit of Ranaranabosa, which is, near Kayasi. If you travel another 1 hour from Kayasi inland, going up the river, then you actually cross the river to the other side of the east bank of the river. And there was a fantastic kava ceremony that was held. And I remarked to them, and I said that all the men who were there, most of them nearly appeared to have six-packs, flat stomachs at least. When you actually, it's interesting, when you come downstream, come closer to the towns and cities, and you go to some of the kava ceremonies, you actually have the reverse. And actually they appreciated that. But it is a fact, it's a lifestyle. It's what they're eating, it's how much they're exercising, and the intake, physical activity. And we obviously don't have that. Now, if you look at the recent statistics, nearly 50% of the population now live in urban or peri-urban areas. So you will probably see an increase in the size of pot bellies, if that is a trend, if that is the trend to go by. So that is, something that is very, very important to us, because if people aren't healthy, they won't be productive members of our community, of our society, of our nation. So we, of course, are looking at, for example, the decentralization of medical services, building more capacity there. There are many procedures, for example, at the moment in Fiji that we cannot do in Fiji. Nobody at the moment, if any one of us has a heart attack at the moment, nobody in Fiji has the capacity to carry out an open heart surgery. That is a fact. We do get visiting teams, but we don't have somebody available 24/7 to be able to do that. That is an issue. And we need to be able to see how we can fix that. Of course, we've given doctors a pay rise to about 85%. We are looking at that. We have already started funding them to do their postgraduate studies, graduate studies in Fiji. And we need to be able to, continue with that. You cannot, of course, produce a person to get an open heart surgery overnight. It takes 10, 15, 20 years for people to actually become experts at that. And that, unfortunately, is a legacy issue we have to deal with. But we cannot simply continue to say that. We need to start building on those efforts. Similarly, of course, we need to be able to have from a medical perspective, there's a lot of internal issues, not just to do with doctors and nurses, but also health administration. To run a modern day hospital, you need a good administrator. You cannot bring an administrator who may have been a corporate services manager or Ministry of Economy to go and run. I thought I'd pick the PSB coordinator or depending on the other permanent secretaries. Somebody from economy to go suddenly run a hospital. They need to be trained, especially in those areas. And we actually don't have that, and we need to be able to refocus that. It kind of feeds me into the last section, which is of course the civil service reforms. And that probably is something that the World Bank is working with us, but we'll be carrying out a number of changes in that respect. So please keep that in mind. So ladies and gentlemen, these are just some of the thoughts that I had. I probably rattled them off very, very quickly, but my mind is sort of just going full speed at the moment about some of these areas. We, of course, have the Honourable Prime Minister at COP22 in Marrakesh. We hope to have some announcements regarding that. We have, of course, Fiji, the Cabinet has decided to sign the treaty on, on the solar energy initiatives that has been undertaken by India and now supported by France. I think over 50 countries have signed up on that. Fiji hopefully will ratify that once Parliament approves it next year. So renewable energy, of course, is a critical issue for us to be able to provide cleaner energy, less dependence on fossil fuel. We spend over $1 billion a year buying fossil fuel. That's a lot of money. If we can reduce our dependence on fossil fuel, it won't only just be good for our balance of payment situation, but also we'll have a cleaner environment. So I'd like to thank, of course, the UN for this initiative. I hope that you bring new ideas, new thoughts as to what we can do and how we can improve services to the ordinary Fijian people. I hope you have left any baggage you may have at the door in respect of your political proclivities, because this is a development issue. We need to be able to look at what we can, all of us can do, put our heads together, as I said, to provide much better services to our people, and also to set in foot in a very fundamental manner a long-term sustainable goal initiatives for us. As you know, we have to try and meet all the SDGs. We have 2030 to meet that. As I keep on saying that SDGs alone themselves do not operate in a vacuum. They all are interlinked, but they also all need money too. If we are to give everybody access to basic health services, the person who may be living right down in the southern east part of Laos, somebody living up in one of the outer islands, or up in the northwest, we need to be able to have the same type of facilities that we offer people in Suva. It costs money. It does not necessarily have the economies of scale, but it is our responsibility as government, our responsibility as NGOs to ensure that those people do not get left behind. But to be able to do that, we need to ensure that we're economically strong. That's the only way you can do that. As I said, if tomorrow we have another cyclone and the economy gets pushed back 20, 30 years, you can actually put a lot of the SDGs outside the door. You simply won't be able to meet those. You will be just simply building up to bring yourself up to the level that we are today. That's a fact of life. And I think most people don't necessarily understand that. And it is a bit of a wake-up call when we think about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your presence. We look forward to your input. And we also like to thank, of course, and Osnat has been pursuing us and for the last couple of months. I'd like to thank her for perseverance and appreciate that very much. I wish you good afternoon.